gonna be interesting.
There's always a little bit of trash talk on the job site, right?
It's finally spring. I'm gonna get the camper out, make a couple changes to it. First thing I want to do is unhook this solar panel, and I'm gonna test the battery and see how it fared throughout the winter. 13.5, so solar panel throughout the winter is a great way to keep your battery charged and in good shape for spring. When I built this camper, I was really focused on maximizing space, and I may have slacked a little on the aerodynamics. In fact, when you take off, it feels like you're towing nothing, but at about 35-40 miles an hour, the truck really starts to work hard because it's pulling so much air. So I decided I'm going to build an air dam on the front to make it more aerodynamic and hopefully pull much easier. Now, if aluminum was a little bit cheaper and I was more of a fabricator as far as welding goes, I built some kind of frame out of aluminum. But I'm going to start out of wood and see what happens. If I can figure something out that'll work, I'll go with it. If I can't, well, then I'll probably have to get somebody to weld something up for me. I'm going to start by marking center 84 5/8. So that would be 3'6" and 5/16. Okay, so there's center. So the more I look at this, the more I see it coming together. I think I'm going to have to completely take this off, build my air dam, and then set it right in here somewhere. So to pull this tank, I had to cut the fuel line, drain the fuel out, cut the fuel filter off, pull a few bolts out, and then the tank comes right off. So if this is right on center, this is going to butt into this. This should work. I should be able to cut one more just like it, and it should be symmetrical on the other side. For making these braces, the angle on one end was small enough it could be cut on my miter saw. The other end, the angle was too steep, and I had to use a circular saw. Alright. Should be identical. Perfectly flush. That way I keep using this one for all of them. Goes like that. This one goes like this. Looks like that should work. My next question, my aluminum is 8 feet long and I want to wrap it in one single piece. That should work. I felt that the strongest way to build this would be using plywood gussets to tie all these boards together, as opposed to screwing through the 2x2s into each other. Let's see what that does. This notch will allow for a 2x2 to go vertical up the front for all the other support boards to tie into. That should work. sure that it's in line with the bottom one. That's not there. That's way out of line. I find that the best way to make these 4 frames identical is to build them on top of each other and clamp them together so they don't move when they're being put together. These vertical boards will keep the spacing the same, give it a little more strength, and give me something to screw the aluminum to at the outside edge. This is the last piece in the main part of the air dam. From here, it will have to slope up at an angle to meet the roof. Now, I need to figure out my angle going up here. Let's figure out an angle coming down here. It's gonna be interesting. I need a straight line up the edge of this so that I know I'm lining that up in the right spot. This 2x2 will be the board that my sloped top screws to. Once I have that angle established, I will use my table saw to cut that 2x2 lengthwise to that angle. Then all the top supports will meet up at the same angle as the cut 2x2. Here I have the angle figured out, and then I transfer it to a block of wood for setting up the table saw. I thought I should probably add another brace from front to back so the wind wouldn't cause it to flex too much. Good job, Woody. The rest of this process was mostly trial and error to get the right angles. Once I had that figured out, it was pretty much smooth sailing from there. I added braces anywhere I thought it might be a weak spot and anywhere I would want to have a nailer for the aluminum sheeting. I took the camper and dropped it off at the welding shop to have them change the axle for me, but I do have something I can still work on. In this little space here, this is what I'll have for space to remount my fuel tank for my heater, so I'm gonna try to figure that out. Obviously that's not gonna work, so I just need to shorten up my braces. Probably bring them back up to about here. I decided I actually want one more support on the ends in line with this. That way the aluminum is screwed down as close to the end as it can be. When I built this camper, I was pretty confident that it would weigh around 1,700 pounds. It ended up weighing 2,090, which was still under the axle rating of 2,200 pounds, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt that it would be safer for me and everyone else on the road if it was upgraded to a 3,500 pound axle. What really convinced me was two nearly identical comments from viewers that had seen cheap springs on boat trailers break and cause catastrophic accidents.
Okay, you ready?
Ready to deliver, baby.
The axle I bought had a 58-inch spring spacing, which is a standard size and pretty easy to come by. This camper frame was a bit of an oddball with a 57-inch spring spacing, so he had to cut the mounts off and move each one in a half of an inch. He was able to reuse one spring hanger on each side, so he only had to cut off one old one on each side, then weld on two new ones. These guys did a great job and made quick work of it, but it sure would have been easier had I brought it to them when it was just a bare frame. With the axle changed and my mind at ease, it was time to install the air dam. The first thing I had to do was locate all the wall studs so I would have strong anchor points to screw to.
Stud there.
The studs were pretty easy to find by measuring from the wall inside to the paneling nails, then adjusting that measurement with the wall thickness and marking it on the outside. Alright, here comes the part that I find very unsettling. I'm about to drill into the front of the camper. Yeah, pretty sure I hit a stud. Getting pretty sturdy. I was really happy to see that all of my measurements were right and every screw found a stud. It definitely pays to measure twice. If I seal against this board, then I put the aluminum on and I seal there, shouldn't get any water in there. The sheeting I'm using is called polycore. It's two thin sheets of aluminum with a polyethylene core. It's much more rigid than aluminum alone. I'm told the best way to cut it is using a razor knife. Lots of light passes along a straight edge until you get through the plastic core and score the second sheet of aluminum. Then break it along a hard table edge. It's kind of time consuming, but at $90 a sheet, I don't mind taking a little extra time. At this point, all that was holding on was actually the plastic protective coating. Wanted to use a screw with a low profile head, but I also want a washer like a steel roughing screw would use. So I'm going to take the washers off of these because I don't want that big hex head sticking out. What I'm going to use is a setup like that. One of these low profile screws with a washer. I know screw choices aren't exactly exciting, but sometimes those hardware choices and finding little odds and ends can really hold a project up. I bet I spent 20 minutes in the store trying to find what I wanted. Getting this to stay where I wanted it wasn't really a one-person job, so I got my wife to help me with it. Okay, now stand up on here and just hold pressure down so that it can't pop up out of that groove. I'm going to screw one in, and then I'm going to work it down.
Can you see? Is it where you want it down there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, I like
All
it.
right.
Just hold it, and it'll take a second.
I don't know how many S's are in Mississippi.
Oh, shut up.
Too much of it.
See what it does if you let up. Yeah, I think I can work with that. It's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna work.
That's all right. Perfection's for losers. Hey, we just found your sticker.
Perfection's for losers. Got one sheet left. Got about 14 and a half. The sheet is 49 and a quarter. I'll just hold this 14 and a half. About 44 inches total. So one sheet will do this. So I need about 29 inches for the top piece and roughly 14 and a half for the wrapper on the front. I'm gonna give myself an extra inch on the front, make it 15 and a half, and then I'll just mark it on the camper itself. If I need about 29 for the front, that'll leave me a good extra piece.
I can't look at it. It's blinding me, baby.
Okay. All right, just 1 second.
One Mississippi.
Shut up.
Two Mississippi.
Okay.
I swear you get more and more S's in your Mississippi every time.
Blah, blah, blah. Push up on your right side. Okay, hold it right there. Now I just had to pull the top sheet off and mark my studs so none of the screws would miss. This layer of sealant at the top is the only one I think is important for keeping water out. The rest are more for wind and looks. I had to go over these corner gaps twice. First I filled the low spots, let it dry, and then I came back over and filled all of it. I was really happy with the way it was looking, but the screws stood out a little too much, so I got some touch-up paint, and after that it looked just about professional. I got a lot of comments about not treating the floor, but because I had used treated plywood, I had to give it time to dry before painting it. This was not a fun job. Honestly, if I had to do it over, I would use non-treated plywood and seal it before installing it. I talked about this in another video, but the reason treated wood needs time to dry, at least a couple months, is that if all the moisture is sealed up, it can mildew under the vinyl flooring and make the camper smell pretty bad. I was pretty happy to see that my fuel tank fit just like I had planned. I'm just going to mark where I want to drill with this piece of tape. Pretty close to right below it. Put that tape on it just to keep from getting sawdust in my line. Now I need a backsplash. I found this aluminum sheeting at the hardware store. I think it should look pretty nice. It's a little bigger than I wanted, so I'm going to cut it down and then I'm going to build a frame around it to make it look a little nicer, give it some character. Just like everything else, I'm using leftovers. This is cherry flooring from the cabin build video. I've used it for just about everything you can think of. First I cut it down to the size I wanted, then I ripped it lengthwise. That way I'll have a thin piece on the back, a slightly thicker piece on the front, and I'll sandwich the aluminum between them and tack them together with some brad nails. All of these materials were so light, it was really hard to keep them in place, so I ended up clamping a bunch of straight edges and then just kind of wedging everything in between them. That'll do. Now the camper needs some trim. I'm going to use 1x3 furring strips. I'm just ripping them right down the middle and staining them up. You really can't beat the price. 2 pieces of trim for under $3. Hard to go wrong there. So I had my angles figured out, but I realized I should have done this piece first because it's going to have to come up into here. So basically I'm probably going to have to cut it off somewhere in here. This end I'm going to cut right here, and this one needed to be slightly longer than what I cut for my test piece. Yeah. Alright, I think I'll trim the rest with a razor knife so that I don't get the ceiling just a little bit hanging on. There we go. I'm gonna call that finished. Got my backsplash done. Got all this stuff trimmed up. Got curtains. Got a dog who seems pretty bored with this. Not bad for furring strips. They really make the place look nicer. Now there's only one thing left to do, and that is tow this sucker down the road and see if it pulls easier with that air dam. We'll see how she does. I think this is going to make a huge difference, but you never know until you try something, so let's find out. Could have been a big waste of time, but I think it should work. Like normal. Right now I'm going 25 and you don't feel anything. A little bit of bounce, but no resistance. Alright, I hit 40, and at 40 it's not really getting much harder. 50, not bad. Oh my gosh, this is so much better than it was before. I feel like I'm just cruising down the road now instead of before 50 miles an hour. You could really feel the drag. Right now I'm going 55 and it's cruising along pretty nice. Let's run it up to 60, see how that feels. There's 60. Yeah, it's a huge improvement. It's unreal the difference it's made. Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed this one, and I hope some of you found it useful. I've got another really cool project in the works, and should be seeing you all again really soon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.